Hello and welcome to the webinar, Why Cal Hypo, the Smarter Chlorine Choice. I'm Scott Webb, editor of Aqua, and today we have with us Shay Parker. Shay has more than 30 years in the recreational pool and spa industry, focusing on safety, training, sales, and sales management. Within her organization, she has been awarded honors for achieving top sales multiple times and has also received the Eagle Award in 2025 for exceptional contributions and sales performance. She has a proven track record for excelling in the areas of customer relations, closing sales, and developing market areas. Shay has also been a CPO instructor for over 25 years, providing certification to thousands of pool professionals and bringing advanced technical skills and knowledge to the table with her background in chemistry. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Shay?
Good morning, everyone. That was a fabulous introduction. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that, the kind words. Um, what this doesn't really say, and I'll just give a brief history. I actually worked at the facility where we manufacture calcium hypochlorite, which is what we're going to be largely be talking about today for shock treating for 14 years. And worked directly with consumers on a consumer helpline for the first 14 years of my career. I helped manage that consumer hotline. People don't really even use those anymore that much, but um, that experience specifically helped me kind of understand the mindset of the consumer. So I'm going to just jump right into this. Our topic today is shock treating weekly, what that looks like for the pool professional, what it looks like for the homeowner, and why we encourage that practice. So, why does this training matter to a pool professional? Pool ownership should feel effortless rather than feeling frustrated. I'm a pool owner myself, so we often say like people that are in the industry are not always the best pool consumer or the best. We don't always do exactly what we're supposed to do with our pool. But this is one practice that I have adopted myself, shock treating the pool weekly, um, to, to provide an effortless experience, prevent cloudy water, recurring pool issues. Those things can erode consumer confidence. And if you're a pool professional, what you really want to do is try to establish a routine that builds stronger customer relationships. So that consistent routine, providing clearer water, providing fewer frustrations for the consumer, it will result in a stronger customer relationship with the people that come in, whether you're either a pool retailer or maybe they use your service department. So shock treating weekly helps you protect the consumer's investment. Pools are a big investment for a consumer. Um, and they want to see the value in it. They want to see that it's fun. Um, Nobody walks into a pool store with the idea of having a pool built, thinking about all the work they're going to have to do. All they're thinking about are the weekend pool parties and the fun that they're going to have. So whatever we can do to support making sure they have more time in their pool that's fun and enjoyable, that's a step forward in the right direction. So, shock treating weekly is a simple, reliable routine that prevents pool problems before they start. The mindset often for the consumer, and I can say this because I am one, is hey, if I have a problem, what do I have to do to fix it? Shock treating weekly is a way to head that off at the pass and make sure we don't run into problem troubleshooting zone. So for sellers, confidence becomes capability. It provides better outcomes with fewer objections. It means more opportunities for increased sales and those stronger customer relations. So those are the reasons why it matters to all of you out there in the audience that are the pool professionals. In this course, at the end of the training, you should be able to explain the importance of shocking weekly, how to implement the program, You should understand the advantages of using calcium hypochlorite as your primary shock treatment. Calculate dosages, correctly apply Cal Hypo to the pool environment, troubleshoot common water problems, explain how to safely store and handle calcium hypochlorite. That's a primary concern, especially for the pool pro. We're going to talk about safe handling and storage. You should be able to recommend Cal Hypo to your customers with confidence. The agenda today, we're going to talk about the routine itself, the routine of shocking, why we want to do it weekly, the chemistry behind it, what is calcium hypochlorite, one of the premium products in the market, and this is one of many Cal Hypo products, but today we're going to be talking about Turbo Shock, and we'll go through that and explain why. We'll also talk about the competition. What are the alternatives to shocking with Cal Hypo and how do they stack up? We'll be talking about implementing a shock weekly process for your business and for your consumer. Again, safety, storage, and handling when we're dealing with calcium hypochlorite. We'll talk about the customer conversations and conversions, how to convert people over to Cal Hypo if they're using a different protocol. And then we'll have some key takeaways for you. So why shock pools weekly? It's one simple behavior that can prevent pool problems before they start. We'll take a little deeper dive into these topics, but just very simplistic explanation. It removes contaminants, destroys chloramines, restores chlorine efficacy, maintains consistent sparkling clear water, and it reduces consumer complaints. That's always a positive thing if we're on the pool pro side of this. So a consistent routine that encourages prevention plus shocking weekly equals clear water. That's, more time swimming, more time for fun for the homeowners, the pool owners, and their families. So throughout, we're going to do just a few quick poll questions. And I wanted to incorporate this question. Who already uses a shock weekly program in their service routine? Got a couple of answers there. Yes, I shock weekly as part of my service routine. Sometimes depending on pool or bather load, or no, I don't shock as needed. Oh, I only shock as needed or after issues. We just kind of want to get, a perspective and a gauge of who's doing this on a routine basis. So, wow, okay. 51% of the answers resulted in a yes, I do use shock as part of my weekly service. 26% sometimes, and 13% no, I only shock as needed. So, very interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, so why does shocking weekly work? For those that did not answer affirmatively, maybe we can convert you or convince you that it's a wonderful practice to use. So throughout a week's time frame, we have a lot of things that happen to that pool environment. It's an open environment. You have, in the summer months or in the swimming months, you have swimmers, which introduces bather waste. You have storms, which introduces waste from the environment. You have all the things that we put on our bodies, anywhere from sunscreen to cosmetics, conditioners for your hair, detergents that are in your bathing suits, all kinds of organic debris that walks into the pool, pollen. All of these things can form what they call a chlorine demand, as well as chloramines. That's when chlorine combines with ammonia-containing compounds and it produces a weak sanitizer. That can present as odor in the pool. It can give skin irritation, red, irritated eyes. So shock treating weekly breaks down those chloramines. It eliminates organic and bather load, and it resets water clarity and restores sparkle. So destroying all those contaminants and doing it on a routine basis every 5 to 7 days works to prevent further issues with clouding, algae blooms, and in general, poor performance of your sanitizer. Just another quick poll question. What issues do you see connected to high cyanuric acid? So we're kind of pivoting the topic just a little bit. And if you're pool pro, you should know what cyanuric acid is. But do you see chlorine lock where the sanitizer feels less effective? Do you see frequent algae growth, cloudy water, bather discomfort? We'll see what these responses look like. Thank you for answering these questions. Let's see. Okay, so 81% of participants say they see chlorine lock where the sanitizer feels less effective. Frequent algae growth, 37%, cloudy water, 35%, and bather discomfort, 16%. So very interesting. Most people, the prominent response was your chlorine lock. It just reduces the effectiveness of your sanitizer. So oh, sorry about that. Took a second for my screen to advance. Okay, so you may not know that calcium hypochlorite shock treatments do not contain cyanuric acid. Cyanuric acid can lead to overstabilization of the pool and chlorine lock, which in turn results in potentially more formation of chloramine. Calcium hypochlorite does not introduce any cyanuric acid into the pool environment. Some shock treatments do, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But why should you use shock weekly with calcium hypochlorite? Cal Hypo is a cost-effective, high-strength, and fast-acting form of chlorine, of chlorinated sanitizer. Again, it does not add any cyanuric acid to the pool. It's safe for all pool applications, including vinyl lined pools, gunite, plaster, across the spectrum of pools, and it provides consistent results. So how does calcium hypochlorite work? And this is a very simplified viewpoint, but it is a granular, when you're shock treating, it's typically done in a granular form. We do have calcium hypochlorite in briquette and tablet form, and those are considered more sanitizer options that you would use throughout your week. Shock treating is a higher dose of a granular chlorine. Once you add that calcium hypochlorite to water, it releases hypochlorous acid, which is also known as free available chlorine. Free available chlorine is the strongest, most active form of chlorine in the water. And then that in turn sanitizes quickly and effectively. You're adding a higher than normal dose, and the objective is to achieve a 5 to 10 part per million available chlorine reading, all in one strong dose in a short window of time. That is how you shock treat a pool with calcium hypochlorite. Because it adds zero cyanuric acid, hypochlorous acid stays effective and remains stable in the water, and it doesn't get locked into chloramine formation. So with Cal Hypo, as with other shock treatments, preventative maintenance is key. Shock treating weekly stops problems before they start, not just after they show up. So it's, some consumers walk out the door, oh, my pool's cloudy, or oh, my pool's turning green. And that's the trigger that they need to take an action. They go to the pool store, have a sample run, shock the pool, but then you're potentially 24 to 48 hours before the pool can be used again. If you do a shock weekly routine, maybe you never get into that cloudy stage or where you're developing algae. Why turbo shock? So we chose to focus on turbo shock for the purposes of this presentation because it's one of the strongest Cal Hypo shocks available, if not the strongest. It's 78% available chlorine. It's up to 7 times stronger than liquid chlorine, sodium hypochlorite. Cal Hypo, in general, solves 90% of pool problems within 24 hours. The fast dissolving granular form is great for quick turnarounds. It's a dry, compact, easy to store. It comes in an available, it comes and is available in a variety of sizes, all the way from a 1 pound bag. There's multi-pack carrying cases, all the way up to a 65-pound pail, which is convenient for service routes. Using 1 pound turbo shock in a 10,000-gallon pool results in 9.4 parts per million of free available chlorine added to the water. So it's well within the shock treatment dosage requirement that is 5 to 10 parts per million. We're right at the top of that range. And just a statistic here, 90% of pool water problems can be resolved within 24 hours by shock treating weekly. This includes cloudy water, algae onset, odors within the pool environment, especially when they come from chloramines, and post-party contamination. I would add storms and weather events to that as well, because sometimes when you get severe weather, a great practice is to shock treat after you've had a bunch of water dumped into the pool, or you've had a severe weather event because you have a lot of additional chlorine demand added to the water. So this slide shows the top 10 pool problems that can be prevented or resolved by shock treating with calcium hypochlorite. It goes from cloudy water, algae, odors, eye irritation, skin irritation, bacterial growth, even biofilm, which we don't talk about a whole lot, filters getting dirty and clogging up, organic staining, and then just in general having a low producing chlorine or a low chlorine content in the water. And you see that shock treating provides a solution for all of those issues. It clears contaminants via particle oxidation, destroys organic growth, eliminates combined chlorines, removes irritants that cause eye and skin irritation, neutralizes combined chlorine, kills bacteria immediately, oxidizes organic slime and growth that produces biofilm. It oxidizes debris before it reaches the filter, so it helps with filter maintenance. It lifts stains through oxidation, especially if they're organic in nature, and it provides an immediate sanitizer boost. So when you use calcium hypochlorite weekly, it resolves cloudy water, algae onset, odors, or chloramines and post-party contamination. So that's pretty convincing when we can take all of those pool issues and there's one simple solution. So what does the competitive landscape look like? In the shock category, it's typical to see people using bleach, dichlor, which is in the isocyanurate stabilized chlorine family, and then Cal Hypo. Those are your three main options. Some people do take their salt system and they boost the output, which technically usually don't get up to a shock treatment 5 to 10 part per million free available chlorine level by boosting your salt system. So we didn't really leave that in here. But you can look at the performance of calcium hypochlorite versus other shock treatments that are used when it comes to killing bacteria, how the product remains stable in storage. This is using the after 1 year. Dichlor and Cal Hypo have relatively good stability, and bleach it degrades pretty quickly. Usually within about 3 months, you have a product that is starting to lose its available chlorine content. Plaster protection, Cal Hypo is really the only sanitizer that's going to provide protection for plaster because of the calcium content. Dichlor and bleach do not. In fact, isocyanurates are known to, over time, as you build that cyanuric acid level, can cause plaster degradation. Only product that contains cyanuric acid in the shock category is dichlor. Some trichlor is also used as shock treatment in certain channels. but calcium hypochlorite and bleach do not contain cyanuric acid. Working with ORP, producing enough free available chlorine to enhance oxidation reduction potential, because it does not contain any cyanuric acid. Both Cal Hypo and bleach fill that niche. And then having a high chlorine output, Cal Hypo and bleach. But across the board, you'll see that Cal Hypo performs in all of those categories. Just to put to the side there, every dose of dichlor adds cyanuric acid to the water, which can present as chlorine lock if you continue down that path where you're overstabilized. Once you reach 100 parts per million of cyanuric acid, you start to see issues with chlorine lock. And that will happen quickly with stabilized sanitizers because about half of the weight of that product introduces cyanuric acid to the water. Half of it by weight is cyanuric acid. So it significantly, every dose is going to increase your cyanuric acid content in the water. And with liquid chlorine, the product weakens quickly because it's unstable. So you lose strength. You don't have the ability to store it for lengthy periods of time. It's more purchase it, use it in a short window, or you start to see that degradation. So how to start a Shock Weekly program? If you were among that, I think it was 13% of pool pros that are not recommending a weekly protocol of shocking, why do you want to do it? If your cyanuric acid levels are high already or creeping, Cal Hypo is an excellent option to switch them to because, again, it's not stabilized. Are free available chlorine readings consistently lower than total chlorine readings? That indicates that you have combined chlorine or chloramines in the water. So absolutely, shocking with Cal Hypo can resolve that issue. If you're using liquid chlorine, is it causing high pH or storage issues? The answer to that is yes. Cal Hypo is a good solution. You can store a smaller, area of product in it. It doesn't take as much storage space. Also, it has a lower pH, a slightly lower pH, so you're not having to adjust the water balance as frequently. Are heavy bather loads present consistently? If the answer to that is yes, definitely a shock treat weekly protocol is a good option. And just a side note over here, when you're using calcium hypochlorite, it's important to monitor total alkalinity and pH. We don't get into the chemistry heavily in this presentation, but did want to point out the product performs at its best when you have a total alkalinity of 60 to 80 parts per million in the water and a pH between 7.2 and 7.6. And I'll even add that you get the best performance out of Cal Hypo when your pH level is 7.2 to 7.4. That seems like a minor tweak, but pH values, there's a big difference between 7.2 and 7.6. So you're going to get sparkling clear water, the best dissolution of the product at those total alkalinity and pH values. Picking a day to shock the pool each week. Now, this is the only behavior that really works for me. During the summer months when I'm actively using my pool, it's every Saturday because that's the only weekday that everybody's home and we're all kind of out doing yard maintenance and working around the house. But other things such as setting a phone or calendar reminder, writing on a physical calendar. Some people still they rely on those drawing, putting in with your dry erase marker. Tie the shock treatment behavior that you're going to do weekly to another pool behavior, such as, hey, every time I'm going to vacuum my pool, I'm going to shock treat it first. Or tie it to another home behavior or day of the week, such as trash day. So reinforcing that behavior of setting a timeline, we're going to do this. And if you're a service professional, you're kind of in charge of that schedule. You're coming in once a week to shock treat and vacuum the pool. What does the weekly routine look like? What is the workflow? It basically starts with testing and adjusting the balance of the water. If your pH is a little too high, if your alkalinity is too high, you have to get those values down in order to have an effective shock treatment. You want to make sure the pump and filter are running and have been running, so to get that turnover of the water. Um, the dosage is going to be 1 pound of turbo shock per 10,000 gallons. So you got a 20,000 gallon pool, you're adding 2 pounds of shock. Broadcast it in the deep end of the pool with the pump running and get a good dissolution, a good distribution of the product throughout the pool water. If you notice a little bit of temporary clouding, that's normal. If the clouding is there and it sticks around more than just a quick flash, it's probably that your pH or alkalinity are a little on the higher end, and it usually dissipates. But just a tip, if it gets cloudy and stays cloudy, that's usually alkalinity or pH. Then you want to circulate your pool immediately for at least 4 to 6 hours. 24 is best. So after you've shock treated, you want to give your pump and your filter the ability to turn over the water, and you want to give your filter the ability to remove any dead debris or contamination that shock treatment is destroying and oxidizing. It's also not a bad idea to vacuum at this stage. Brush the pool, vacuum it down. Then the next step would be retesting the chlorine levels. See if your shock treatment got your chlorine value up to that 5 to 10 ppm. And before you return to the pool for swimming, that chlorine level needs to be back down to the normal range, 2 to 4 parts per million. You can record the results and then just repeat that weekly. That is a shock treat weekly workflow. So, other than the brushing and the vacuuming that could take place, it's not a difficult process. Troubleshooting. Okay, so what happens if I get, I mentioned this briefly, cloudy water after shocking? Again, it may be your pH is a little too high or total alkalinity. That can result in poor dispersion and dissolution of the product. So if that happens, run your pump continuously for 24 hours, brush the pool, check your values, adjust your pH and alkalinity down to 60 to 80 for alkalinity, 7.2 to 7.6 for pH. If you have low free available chlorine or high combined chlorine, probably want to look at your sample a little more closely and see if you may have high cyanuric acid or a value approaching 100 or above 100. In that case, the fix would be to switch to Cal Hypo only for your routine. So in addition to shock treating weekly with Cal Hypo, you could switch to a non-stabilized Cal Hypo tablet as your weekly maintenance rather than using an isocyanurate-based product like trichlor or dichlor. Those products are available. You can use them with feeders. You can use them skimmer only. So switch to a Cal Hypo routine until you get that high cyanuric acid level down. That also does involve draining water a lot of times and refilling with fresh water. What if you're getting scale or a crusty white buildup around the pool surface, or it could be on your steps, on your ladder, on anywhere on the pool surface? That typically is a water balance issue. You could have over saturated water, high pH, high total alkalinity, along with high calcium hardness levels. So typically looking at water balance, making sure that your saturation index levels are within range, and getting your alkalinity and pH levels down to the lower end of the range typically will take care of scale. You can add a sequestrant or a metal control, and that will also help loosen that scale, and then you're just going to have to do some brushing to remove it from the surface. Okay, safe handling and storage, particularly with calcium hypochlorite, is a really important topic, and I think this is some hesitancy with potentially with pool pros, is like there's a preconception possibly that calcium hypochlorite, there's more of a storage and handling concern. Calcium hypochlorite is safe when it's stored and handled properly, as with all other forms of chlorinated compounds. Big key things here, just this is brief, but you never want to pre-mix calcium hypochlorite before adding to the pool. So the old practice of having a bucket of water, adding the shock to it, mixing it up, pouring it to the pool, it's unnecessary and it's not the safest thing to do. So we recommend broadcasting the product directly into the pool. If you want to brush the pool, that's fine, but there's no need to pre-mix. Also, you do not want to allow commingling of calcium hypochlorite with any other chemicals. So there's no pre-mixing and adding other items to a bucket, like maybe it's your pH adjusters or algicides. That's not a safe practice. So no pre-mixing or commingling with any other chemicals. Always make sure you use clean, dry tools. What are the tools? Okay, so it's maybe the scoops from the bucket. They usually come with nice big, you know, 1 or 2 pound scoop. You want to make sure those remain clean and dry. Use the scoop from the bucket, add the product to the pool, restore it back into the bucket without it being contaminated or wet. There's no need to rinse it off, just put it right straight back in the bucket. When you're using Cal Hypo granular, you want to broadcast it into the pool water with the pump running. And then keep everyone out of the pool until the chlorine level returns to 1 to 4 parts per million. And that can take 12 hours. It could take 24. It just depends on really how much chlorine demand you had in the water, but just retest it. Also, you want to keep the product in its raw form and its granular form away from heat sources. When you're storing this, store it in a cool, dry, well-ventilated area, away from any heat sources, away from other, especially liquid pool products, and you don't want it commingling. As long as it stays in the package with the lid on, you're good, but keep it away from heat sources. Cool, dry, well-ventilated area. Never store liquids above solids. So envision your storage area in your shed or your garage. Always make sure your calcium hypochlorite is stored, separately from liquids. And definitely with no liquids above the solids. Because if somebody comes along and accidentally knocks an algicide over and it leaks down into a bucket of calcium hypochlorite, that's where you could have an incompatibility issue or a reaction. Also, keep away from acids and other chlorines, and keep containers sealed or uncontaminated. I've seen some pictures over the years of homeowners with their chlorine tablets and their shock products stored up on their deck, and it's an open deck. That's not where these need to be. They need to be in a cool, dry, well-ventilated, covered area that's protected from the weather. Okay, so pivoting to how we position and recommend the product. Yes, shocking weekly, just the process of shocking weekly could seem to cost more initially. You're paying for something, you're treating something before there's a problem. It's preventative maintenance. There is a cost to that. However, the message is that it saves you down the road because you don't get the costly pool problems where you have to add a lot of treatment to the pool to clear up an algae bloom or a pool problem. It also, you have to tell the story of performance. Adding this routine to your pool care routine provides you with better results over time, and fewer issues. So there's a value to that. So there can actually be a savings up to $900 yearly in water replacement costs. And that comes from a couple of things. If you're adding a cyanuric acid based product, an ISO, Eventually, you're going to have to drain some water. So that water replacement, also additional chemicals that you have to use when you're rebalancing the water after water replacement, that can add up quickly. It also saves up to 600 gallons of water per week versus dichlor. If you're having to backwash, remove water from the pool to pull a cyanuric acid out of the water, that's a costly endeavor over time. And it reduces those costly drain refill cycles, reduces time spent balancing, the money that's spent balancing, and recovering cloudy water or algae filled pools. So that's, some points that you can use to overcome the cost objections of adding a weekly shock treatment to the pool. Positioning performance. So how does this perform? It solves 90% of pool problems within 24 hours. Up to 7 times stronger than liquid chlorine, fewer balance adjustments needed. It seems like if you look at a map of the United States, there are areas that heavily use liquid chlorine. There are areas that heavily use stabilized sanitizers. And that's just kind of the way it's always been done. And I would challenge you to look at the products that you're using and whether they really perform up to the standard of solving 90% of pool problems, being 7% stronger than liquid chlorine, adding no cyanuric acid. So performance in and of itself is a value. And it also provides sparkling clear water with fewer treatment mistakes and complaints. And when positioning value, you look at your long-term savings. When you shock weekly, you avoid costly recovery treatments, drain and refill cycles, wasted chlorine when you're draining water that's already chlorinated and treated. It's a simple routine that saves real money all season long. Positioning Cal Hypo performance prevention. Most water issues come from stabilizer creep, cyanuric acid creep, and calcium hypochlorite avoids those issues entirely. There's no cyanuric acid. So that saves money in the long run. And I'll even go a little further than that. Let's say you have a plaster or gunite pool. Over the life of that pool, if it's treated with cyanuric acid containing products and those levels creep up over 100, it's proven that that causes degradation to plaster and grout. So you could have costly repairs down the road. Positioning Cal Hypo is a season-long value. Cal Hypo costs a little more up front, but it saves a lot more over the season because it prevents the expensive water problems that cheaper shocks cause. Key reminder, price objections disappear when customers understand how calcium hypochlorite prevents the costly problems that cheaper sanitizers create. So a little bit of education with consumers can go a long way. But also, in my experience, when I've seen a consumer get into this weekly shock cadence, they see the value of it because the pool just consistently stays clear and sparkling. So that sticks in their head. Hey, as long as I do this behavior, my pool is in great shape and my family can continue swimming and I don't have to go back and treat for algae or cloudy water. So how do we position it against liquid chlorine? Liquid chlorine, there's a lot of bulk to storing liquid chlorine. When you're moving it around, it even can cause potential damage to service vehicles because of spills and leakage, and even a potential risk of injury. So carrying a larger Cal Hypo quantity to service a pool for multiple days or run out on a service route, it's more practical. You got a bucket of Cal Hypo, you get more applications out of that, and you don't have to worry about spills and leaks. So recommendation number 1, when a pool is in trouble, shock it with Cal Hypo. If Cal Hypo is what you use when it matters most, why not use it more consistently as a prevention versus troubleshooting only? So if you're already doing it when you hit the tough spots, when the pool's in full blown pea green algae mode, or every time you get excessively cloudy water, when you open a pool for the season, you go straight for the Cal Hypo shock. When you close a pool at the end of the season, you're going for the Cal Hypo shock. So if it works during those times when you need it most, you can certainly understand that it's also a great option for a preventative maintenance program. Second point, I highly recommend Cal Hypo because nothing else gives you the sparkle for your pool. What contributes to that sparkle? It's not just that the pool's clean, that it's has all the organics removed, that it has all of the contaminants in the bather load removed. Calcium hypochlorite provides an improved look to the water, and there's a very specific reason why. The calcium content in the water provides a higher refractory index. So when the rays of the sunlight hit the water, it picks up on those calcium particles, and it's almost like a rainbow effect or a diamond effect. Having that little bit of extra calcium in the water provides better sparkle. If anyone out there, and I can speak to this myself, my pool is 100% Cal Hypo. I use it for my primary sanitizer. I use it for my shock treatment, and the pool is sparkling clear. Like you can see all the way to the bottom. You can see, have a vinyl pool. You can see all the pattern of the liner. So it does improve the look of the water. Key reminders. Shock treating weekly prevents 90% of pool problems. It does not add any cyanuric acid, so no chlorine lock. Again, it's 7 times stronger than liquid chlorine. Good value for your purchase. And it provides sparkling clear water with fewer complaints. So in the end, it saves customers money over the pool season when they shock treat weekly, which is a big deal, especially in challenging economy. Poll question. What's one thing you learned today that you can use to help promote or sell Cal Hypo? And this is going to be an open-ended question, so we're going to see some of the responses. So thank you for that. Hopefully you guys have been able to glean a little bit of promotional assistance for selling Cal Hypo and building out a Shock Weekly program. Bear with me, it's my screen's not advancing. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so just a quick recap of our objectives for the course. We wanted to explain the importance of shocking weekly, how to implement the program, to give you an understanding of the advantages of Cal Hypo, how to look at dosing and correctly apply Cal Hypo, how to troubleshoot common water problems. We wanted to talk about safe handling and storage, and we wanted to recommend Cal Hypo to consumers to overcome objections. So that brings us to the end, to our Q&A.
That was very impressive, Shay. We have some time for some of the questions. We had not a record number, but I would say this was in the top 2% of all the webinars that we've done in terms of just sheer numbers of questions submitted. If we don't get to your question, we can answer those individually. So let's get started with some of these. Steve Case asks, what is the target range for calcium hardness when using TurboShock?
The range for calcium hypochlorite can go anywhere from 200 to 1,000 parts per million. And I would say your target would be not above 500. And that's pretty typical. Because we keep the alkalinity and the pH a little lower on the scale when using Cal Hypo, you're at 7.2 to 7.6, 60 to 80. You can actually have a little bit more calcium in the water and still remain in good water balance.
Okay. Anthony Shemnosky asks, is there a certain water temperature where shock becomes ineffective? Pool water is pretty cold up here in the Northeast during opening season.
There's not a level where it becomes ineffective, but it certainly could affect the dissolution or dissolve rate. So you may see that you have to do a little bit more brushing, but you can also add calcium hypochlorite to a skimmer because it's not an acidic compound. It has a pH of around 10 or 11. It can be added to the skimmer without causing any damage to O-rings or to your pool equipment. So if you feel like you're not getting a good dissolution, it can be added through the skimmer in the colder months. You'll still get a good free available chlorine reading.
Okay. This comes from Christina Steiner, who asks, is Cal Hypo good for salt pools also?
Yes, actually, that's a very good point because I think people tend to only use their salt pool, the controller, and maybe they bump up the output if they see that they need a little bit of additional free available chlorine. That can kind of cause wear and tear on your salt system over time. A shock weekly program with salt pools is actually a great addition because it kind of saves your controller and your salt system itself from having to consistently generate a higher output if you're using your bump feature. So yes, it is recommended for
Okay.
salt.
This question comes to us from Lily Larson, who asks, how soon after using should you expect results with shocking weekly?
I think she means when you do a shock treatment, how soon should you see results? It really depends on what the issue is. If you're going in and a pool is completely green and you're doing it as more of a troubleshoot, you can see results within 12 to 24 hours. And in fact, really within a couple hours, you should start to see a difference in the appearance of the pool. If you've added enough for, let's say, an algae treatment. As far as like the weekly system, you would see results starting that first week. So you see water clarity, definitely, and a better look to the pool. But then if you do it again the following week, it's just going to get better and better. But I would say you would start to see results immediately.
This question comes all the way from Portugal. Rita Morgado asks, using Cal Hypo Shock weekly, she then asks the questions, I don't have to use more dichlor tablets?
Okay. So she probably means more trichlor tablets. Yeah, that's the stabilized chlorine. It actually does assist. Like for instance, if you're constantly just adding more chlorine tablets to try to achieve a higher chlorine reading, that's going to provide you a higher chlorine reading, but it also adds more cyanuric acid or stabilizer to the water. So the practice of adding Cal Hypo once a week gives you a bump in your free available chlorine. And yes, you would use fewer tablets because you'll get an effect on your free available chlorine that'll last a few days. So yes, you would use less chlorine tablets and as a result have less cyanuric acid added to the water.
Okay. This one actually comes from me. Why, what's the most common reason that customers don't shock weekly?
I think probably cost would be the most common reason. The perception is why would I do that if I don't have a problem? It's costing more money. But again, we go back to the point that we just said. You're using less of your primary sanitizer. There's less demand on your salt system. Um, so it's another form of chlorine, yes, that you pay for, but you get the value. It gives you a chlorine reading that lasts 1 to several days, depending on how much chlorine demand you have. So it's a cost perception, but it's not necessarily the reality when you're preventing all the other issues and you're using less of essentially everything, less algicide, less potentially pool balancing chemicals. So it balances out, but I think cost is probably the number one objection.
This comes from Joe Houston, who asks, on a related note, are there any plans for Solenis to develop or release a CYA reducer? Just curious.
It's certainly something that we always look for, and that we're always open to. We have researched many technologies, and haven't really found something that provided consistent results. So that's the golden goose, I think, the golden goose egg. But we are certainly looking for that alternative option.
Right. What reminder strategy for shocking weekly has worked best for you, such as choosing a set day or phone reminders, tying it to vacuuming, or tying it to a home routine that you do regularly, like trash day or something like that?
I think, for me personally, I'm so busy during the week. It's the Saturday routine. That's when it happens, when I have time to get out there. But for others, I think probably setting a reminder would be the best option. I know I don't think I can achieve anything in my life with it unless I put it in my phone and add a reminder. shock weeking, shock treating has kind of become my Saturday routine. But if it were not for that, I'd definitely have it in my phone as a reminder.
Uh, William Tublin asked something that several people asked, which was about the presentation, something that they could either use to give customers or just use as a reminder for themselves. And I hate to put you on the spot here, but is it possible to get the PowerPoint after the presentation?
Uh, that would be, I think, possible. We would have to look, I've got some co-hosts on here. We'd have to see if they can put it in maybe a shareable PDF format. We do, as a company, as Salinas, we do offer some Shock Weekly pamphlets, and information that they could, if they reach out to me, I can provide those. It's sort of like a one page, this is why you Shock Weekly. But as long as it's okay with, uh, you know, our organizers for this event from our company, I don't mind sharing the slides in a PDF form.
Okay. We have time for one more, and that is, what's the first improvement that you typically notice after you start shocking weekly?
I think the biggest thing is going to be water clarity. Most people do not perceive if their pool is slightly cloudy or turbid. They go out, they see the water's blue, but they don't really recognize that the clarity of the water is off because they're used to seeing it that way every week. So I think your biggest thing is going to be how the pool sparkles and how clear it is, especially if you do that routine weekly and you manage your water chemistry level.
That's a good one. Well, I think that's going to do it for today. I want to thank you, Shay, for that informative hour. I learned a lot about pool chemistry. And I want to especially thank everyone for coming to the webinar. We had a good turnout and really good questions. I know everyone's got a lot left to do today. It's still early and it's a busy time. So let's all get back to the pool business and we'll see you next time.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you allowing me to do this, and I enjoyed it. Um, my contact information, I think, is on here, I believe. But yeah, appreciate it. Love to do it again sometime. Thank you.
Thanks, Shay.